Supreme Commander Varric stood before the massive holographic display aboard the Crimson Empire's flagship, his iridescent scales reflecting the swirling lights of the projected planet below. New Haven, the latest human colony world, rotated slowly in the display, its continents a patchwork of agricultural developments and scattered settlements. Simple creatures, Varric rumbled, his auxiliary breathing gills fluttering with barely contained excitement. Look at them, spreading across the surface like bacteria, scratching in the dirt. He turned to face the assembled War Council, his ceremonial armor glinting under the harsh lights of the command center. They don't even have a proper orbital defense network. Dr. Nix, the Empire's leading xenobiologist and chief architect of the War Beasts program, shifted uncomfortably in her hovering support chair. Her small, spindly frame seemed to shrink further under Varric's intimidating presence. Supreme Commander, my latest analysis of human historical record suggests. Spare me your academic concerns, Doctor, Varric interrupted, his tail lashing with irritation. I've reviewed the physical data myself. Humans are the weakest spacefaring species we've encountered. No natural armor, no enhanced senses, barely enough muscle mass to function in standard gravity. He gestured to a series of comparative anatomical displays floating beside the planet projection. The War Council members chittered in agreement, their various appendages moving in gestures of approval. General Kex, veteran of the Orion campaign, raised a manipulator appendage. Why not simply bombard them from orbit, Supreme Commander? It would be more efficient. Varric's outer membrane shifted to a deep purple of satisfaction. Because, General, New Haven is perfect for colonization. Rich soil, established infrastructure, and an atmosphere that requires minimal modification for our people. Why destroy what we can simply take? He tapped a control, and the holographic display shifted to show images of the Empire's pride, the War Beasts. They were monstrosities of biological engineering and cybernetic enhancement. Six-legged predators from high-gravity worlds, serpentine hunters from gas giant moons, aerial killers with synthetic wings that could slice through reinforced steel. Each one had been enhanced with the latest in Imperial technology, their natural weapons supplemented with energy projectors and their hides reinforced with living metal. We'll deploy during their harvest season, Varric explained, zooming in on the agricultural regions. Their communities are spread thin, focused on gathering crops. The War Beasts will devastate their farming settlements, and their primitive militias won't know how to respond. Dr. Nix made one final attempt. Supreme Commander, please. My research indicates that humans have a remarkable history of. Enough. Varric's scales flashed warning red. Your concerns are noted, Doctor. But I didn't achieve my position by listening to overcautious scientists. The War Beasts program is your creation, you should be proud to see it used. As the council members filed out, Dr. Nix remained behind, her manipulators dancing over her data tablet. She pulled up ancient human historical records, cave paintings showing small groups taking down massive creatures, documents describing the extinction of entire species, studies of human hunting patterns across multiple worlds. They're making a terrible mistake, she whispered to her personal log. These farmers, these simple creatures they're dismissing, they're the descendants of the most successful predator species their world ever produced. In the launch bay, the War Beasts were being loaded into their drop pods. Massive creatures, some larger than Imperial shuttlecraft, docilely following their handlers' commands. Their cybernetic enhancements gleamed under the bay lights, and their behavioral control systems ensured perfect obedience. They were the pinnacle of Imperial military engineering, about to be unleashed on an unsuspecting human colony. The first wave of drop pods was prepared for launch. Varric watched from the command center as the targeting computers plotted optimal drop zones across New Haven's agricultural belts. Begin the deployment, he ordered, his voice thick with anticipation. Let's show these humans what real predators look like. As the pods began their descent through New Haven's atmosphere, looking like meteors streaking across the morning sky. Dr. Nix made her final log entry. Supreme Commander Varric thinks he's deploying unstoppable predators. What he's actually doing is giving humanity's greatest hunters a chance to prove why they dominated their homeworld. The Empire is about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating humans. The pods streak downward, their cargo of death and destruction about to meet an enemy far more dangerous than anyone in the Crimson Empire could imagine. The simple farmers of New Haven were about to remind the galaxy why humans had always been the apex predators of any world they inhabited. The morning sun cast long shadows across the wheat fields of New Haven as Hannah Henderson guided her harvester through the golden stalks. 20 years of farming on frontier worlds had taught her to notice even the smallest changes in her environment, which was why she immediately recognized that something was wrong with the light. The streaks across the sky weren't natural. They moved too purposefully, slowing as they descended, and they carried with them a sound that made her skin crawl, a high-pitched whine that cut through the normal morning chorus of birds and insects. Hannah keyed her radio. "All bands, this is Henderson at Grid Section 7. We've got incoming." She didn't wait for a response before hitting the harvester's emergency broadcast system. "Everyone in the Western Quadrant, get to shelter. Now." The first pod crashed into her neighbor's soybean field, the impact sending shockwaves through the ground that she could feel even inside her harvester's reinforced cabin. The pod side split open like a blooming flower made of metal, and what emerged made Hannah's breath catch in her throat. It was massive, easily the size of her harvester, moving on 6 legs that ended in claws that could shred metal. Its body was a nightmare fusion of organic muscle and cybernetic enhancement, with weapons she recognized mounted on its shoulders. But Hannah Henderson hadn't survived 2 decades on the frontier by panicking. She keyed her radio again. "Central Command, we've got engineered combat creatures. Repeat, these aren't standard troops. They're using some kind of enhanced predators." She paused, watching the beast's movement pattern. "And they're hunting." In New Haven's Emergency Response Center, Director Rajesh Patel listened to the reports flooding in from across the farming sectors. More pods were landing, releasing different varieties of these war beasts. But something caught his attention: the farmers weren't running. Instead, they were organizing. "They're using regular hunting patterns," came Hannah's voice over the command channel. "Moving like big cats. Testing boundaries, marking territory. Whoever engineered these things based them on natural predators. Can we fight them?" Rajesh asked, his fingers flying over his console as he coordinated the response. Hannah's laugh crackled through the speaker. "Director, every farmer on this planet came from somewhere else. We all learned how to handle predators before we ever got here. The question isn't can we fight them, it's how do we hunt them." Across the agricultural regions, a remarkable transformation was taking place. Farmers weren't fleeing, they were adapting. Marcus Thorne, who'd spent 30 years as a wildlife control specialist before becoming a farmer, was already organizing hunting parties. "These things may have fancy tech," he explained to his group, "but underneath, they're still animals. And animals have patterns." The first successful takedown came 3 hours after the initial drops. Yvette Laurent, whose family had been farming on 3 different frontier worlds, noticed something crucial about the beast's behavior. "They're avoiding water," she broadcast on the emergency channel. "They're cybernetics, they're not fully waterproofed." The revelation spread quickly. Irrigation systems, originally designed to nurture crops, became weapons. Teams of farmers coordinated their efforts, using their intimate knowledge of the land to herd the beasts into flooded fields where their advanced systems began to malfunction. Hannah found herself leading one such operation. Her harvester, already a massive piece of machinery, became even more formidable when her engineer neighbor, Raj Patel, helped her modify it. They reinforced the front with pieces of fallen pod metal and turned the grain collection system into a makeshift water cannon. They made 2 mistakes. Hannah explained to her impromptu militia over the radio as they prepared to take down one of the larger beasts. First, they thought we were just farmers. They forgot that every one of us came from worlds where we had to deal with dangerous wildlife. She watched through her harvester's viewport as the trap was set, irrigation channels strategically flooded, modified farm equipment positioned behind camouflaged hay bales, rifles at the ready in the hands of people who'd been hunting since childhood. Second, she continued, they gave us predictable predators. Real animals adapt. These things? They're running on programming, and that makes them vulnerable. The beast charged into their prepared killing zone, its sophisticated targeting systems confused by the multiple heat signatures they'd set up. It never stood a chance. Coordinated water jets from modified irrigation equipment shorted out its cybernetic enhancements. Without its technological advantages, it was just another large predator facing the species that had evolved to become the ultimate hunters. In orbit, Supreme Commander Varric received the first reports of beast losses with disbelief. How are they doing this? He demanded, his scales shifting to a mottled pattern of rage and confusion. They're just farmers. Dr. Nix, monitoring the situation from her laboratory, finally allowed herself a small smile. No, Supreme Commander. They're humans. And you just gave them exactly the kind of challenge they evolved to overcome. Back on the surface, Hannah surveyed the fallen war beast, its once impressive form now disabled and harmless. Her radio crackled with reports of similar successes across other sectors. Communities were sharing information, teaching each other their successful tactics, and improving their methods with each encounter. Central Command, she reported, we're going to need more irrigation pipes and some welding equipment. And tell everyone, these things hunt in patterns, but so do we. We've been hunting dangerous animals since before we learned to write. Time to show these aliens why humans were always the apex predators. As the sun set on the first day of the invasion, the farmers of New Haven had sent a clear message to the Crimson Empire: they had severely underestimated what humans were capable of. The war beasts were fearsome, but they were about to learn why humans had dominated every ecosystem they'd ever encountered. The captured war beast lay immobilized in the makeshift research facility that had, until 2 days ago, been New Haven's largest grain storage facility. Priya Patel, the colony's leading agricultural robotics engineer, moved carefully around the creature, her diagnostic tools scanning its cybernetic components while a team of veterinarians studied its biological systems. Fascinating, she muttered, watching data scroll across her tablet. They integrated the control systems directly into the creature's nervous system. Advanced, but inflexible. She looked up at Marcus Thorne, who stood watching from a safe distance. These things can't learn or adapt. They're running on preset programs. Marcus nodded, his weathered face creasing in thought. That's why they keep making the same mistakes. Real predators learn from failed hunts. These things just keep following their programming. He tapped his radio. Henderson, you getting this? Hannah's voice crackled through the speaker. Copy that. So we're not just fighting animals or machines, we're fighting both, with all their weaknesses and none of their strengths. The discovery spread quickly through the colony's rapidly evolving defense network. What had started as scattered resistance was becoming an organized hunting operation. Teams across New Haven were sharing information, developing tactics, and teaching each other what worked. In the northern sectors, Raj Singh's farming collective had discovered that the flying variants of the war beasts couldn't maintain their sophisticated targeting systems in heavy rain. They modified their weather control stations, originally designed to protect crops from storms, to create localized rain cells that effectively grounded the aerial hunters. It's like my grandmother used to say, Raj broadcast over the emergency channel, technology is wonderful until it gets wet. These things are over-engineered, too dependent on their advanced systems. The southern communes, led by veteran ranger Lisa Chen, had developed their own techniques for dealing with the serpentine variants. They're using infrared to track us, she explained during the colony-wide tactical briefing. But we can use that against them. Every irrigation pipe, every hot engine, becomes a decoy. In orbit, Supreme Commander Varric's scales had taken on the pale yellow of distress as he watched more war beasts fall. "This is impossible," he snarled at his command staff. "How are they adapting so quickly?" Dr. Nix, who had been compiling data on the humans' response, finally spoke up. "They're doing what they've always done, Commander. Sharing knowledge. Teaching each other. Every success is analyzed and improved upon. It's how their species survived before they had technology." On the surface, the hunters of New Haven were proving her point. Marcus Thorne stood in the colony's emergency command center, surrounded by screens showing tactical data from across the planet. "Look at their movement patterns," he explained to the gathered team leaders. "They're still hunting like Earth's big cats, ambush predators. They look for isolated targets, strike fast, and retreat." Hannah Henderson, her harvester now modified with makeshift armor and electronic countermeasures designed by Priya, added her observations. "They're also territorial. Each beast stakes out an area and defends it. We can use that, force them to cluster, make them compete with each other." The humans' methodical approach was paying off. What had started as desperate defense had evolved into systematic hunting. Teams would identify a war beast's territory, study its patterns, and set up elaborate traps using their intimate knowledge of the land and their farming equipment. Priya's research facility had become the heart of their technological resistance. "Every beast we capture teaches us more about their weaknesses," she explained to Director Rajesh Patel. "Their creators made them perfect, and that's their flaw. They can't improvise, can't adapt. Not like we can." In the fields, the hunters demonstrated this advantage. When the Empire deployed larger, more heavily armored beasts, the humans simply adjusted their tactics. Heavy harvesting machines were converted into mobile fortresses. Irrigation systems became weapons platforms. Farm drones were reprogrammed to track and harass the creatures. "They don't understand what they're dealing with," Lisa Chen observed as she coordinated another successful hunt. "Humans didn't become Earth's dominant species because we were the strongest or fastest. We did it because we were the best at adapting and working together." The war beasts were learning this lesson the hard way. Their sophisticated systems, designed to make them perfect predators, became predictable weaknesses once understood. Their inability to adapt meant that every successful human tactic remained effective. By the end of the first week, the humans had turned their entire colony into one giant hunting ground. They knew every field, every trail, every hill and valley. The war beasts, for all their power and technology, were fighting on human terms now. In her laboratory aboard the Imperial flagship, Dr. Nix updated her research logs. "The Empire made a fundamental mistake," she recorded. "They assumed that because humans had advanced technology, they had forgotten their primitive skills. Instead, they've combined both, using their tools and technology to enhance the hunting techniques their ancestors developed over millennia." She watched through observation feeds as another war beast fell to a coordinated human attack. "These simple farmers are teaching us a lesson that humanity's prehistoric prey learned long ago: on any world humans inhabit, they will find a way to become the apex predators." Down on New Haven, as the sun set on another successful day of hunting, Hannah Henderson stood in her modified harvester, watching the horizon. "Send word to all sectors," she broadcast. "We've learned how to hunt these things. Now it's time to teach them why humans were always the most dangerous animals on Earth." Supreme Commander Varric's command center had descended into chaos. The holographic displays showed dozens of disabled war beasts across New Haven's surface, each one representing billions in lost resources and shattered imperial pride. His scales flickered between rage red and fear white as he watched another coordinated human attack bring down one of his latest creations. "Release the Omega variants," he commanded, his voice trembling with barely contained fury. All of them. The drop pods screamed through New Haven's atmosphere, larger and more numerous than before. Inside each one lay the Empire's most advanced war beasts yet, monstrosities that combined the deadliest features of multiple predator species with cutting-edge weapons technology. On the surface, Hannah Henderson watched the new arrivals through enhanced binoculars. "Well," she said into her radio, "looks like they're done playing around." She stood in the command center of what had once been her farm's main storage silo, now converted into a tactical operations facility. "All sectors, be advised, new variants incoming. These ones are bigger." Priya Patel's voice crackled through the speaker. "Good. Bigger means more systems to exploit." The engineer had transformed her research facility into a combination laboratory and weapons factory. Captured war beast components were being systematically studied and repurposed. Their greatest weakness is their perfection. The more complex they make them, the more vulnerabilities we have to work with. The first Omega variant emerged from its pod in the eastern agricultural sector. It was a nightmare fusion of multiple predator species, the speed of their aerial hunters combined with the strength of their heavy ground units and the stealth capabilities of their infiltrator models. Its weapons were more advanced, its armor thicker, its targeting systems more sophisticated. Lisa Chen, coordinating the eastern sector's defense, watched it through her tactical display. "Look at how it moves," she broadcast to her hunting teams. They tried to combine different hunting styles. "Big mistake, it doesn't know what it wants to be." The humans' response demonstrated just how far they'd come from their early defensive actions. Teams of modified harvesters moved in coordinated patterns, herding the beast toward prepared killing grounds. Drone swarms, reprogrammed by Priya's engineering teams, disrupted its targeting systems with precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses. "They're trying to overcome their adaptability problem with brute force," Raj Singh observed as he coordinated the northern sector's defense network. "Adding more features instead of fixing the fundamental flaw, these things still can't learn." The Omega variants were deadly, yes. They killed some colonists, destroyed equipment, and ravaged fields. But they were fighting against an enemy that had spent 2 weeks learning, adapting, and perfecting their hunting techniques. Every human success was analyzed, improved upon, and shared across the colony's defense network. In her laboratory, Priya made a breakthrough that would prove decisive. The more complex their integration of biological and technological systems, the more vulnerable they are to targeted disruption, she explained to the colony's leadership. "We can use their own cybernetics against them." The humans began deploying what they called feedback weapons, devices that could tap into the war beast's control systems and create cascading failures. Farming machines were modified to emit specific electromagnetic frequencies that disrupted the creature's enhanced senses. Irrigation systems were reprogrammed to create electromagnetic dead zones that confused their targeting systems. "They gave them every advantage," Hannah observed as she watched another Omega variant fall to a coordinated attack. "Except the ones that matter most, the ability to adapt and the wisdom to retreat." In orbit, Dr. Nix presented her latest analysis to an increasingly desperate Supreme Commander Varric. "The humans have turned our own technological superiority against us," she explained. "Every system we added to make the war beasts more deadly became another vulnerability for them to exploit." Varric's scales had taken on the pale gray of defeat. "How?" he demanded. "How did simple farmers do this?" "Because they're not simple farmers," Dr. Nix replied. "They're engineers, veterans, hunters, and survivors. People who chose to live on the frontier, knowing they'd face dangers. And now we've given them the ultimate challenge, one that combines every survival skill their species evolved to perfect." On the surface, the humans continued to demonstrate why they had dominated every ecosystem they'd ever encountered. When the Omega variants developed new attack patterns, the colonists adjusted their tactics. When the beasts deployed more powerful weapons, the humans developed better countermeasures. It was a practical demonstration of the adaptability that had made humanity Earth's apex predator. They thought technology would overcome evolution, Marcus Thorne remarked as he coordinated another successful hunt. Forgot that humans evolved to be problem solvers. Every challenge they throw at us just makes us better hunters. The Empire's supposedly unstoppable Omega variants were being systematically hunted down by people who had spent millennia perfecting the art of dealing with dangerous predators. The more sophisticated the Empire made their war beasts, the more weaknesses they introduced for humanity to exploit. As night fell over New Haven, Hannah stood in her command center, reviewing the day's successes. "Send word to all sectors," she broadcast. "Tomorrow we take the fight to them. Time to show the Empire that they didn't just wake a sleeping giant, they challenged humanity to a hunting contest." In orbit, Dr. Nix made one final entry in her research logs: the Empire tried to create the perfect predators. Instead, they gave humanity a chance to prove why they were always the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The war beasts were designed to be unstoppable hunters, but they're about to learn what it means to become prey. Supreme Commander Varric stood in his command center, his scales now permanently fixed in the pale gray of impending defeat. The holographic displays surrounding him told a story that would soon become legend throughout the galaxy, the story of how the mighty Crimson Empire's most advanced weapons were systematically dismantled by what they had dismissed as simple farmers. "We have one option left," he announced to his war council, his voice hollow. "Deploy the Titan-class beasts." Even Dr. Nix, who had predicted this disaster, felt her breath catch. "Supreme Commander, the Titans aren't ready. Their integration of biological and cybernetic systems is unstable. Deploy them all." Varric roared. "I will not be remembered as the commander who lost to primitive dirt farmers." On the surface of New Haven, Hannah Henderson and her fellow colonists watched as massive drop pods, larger than any they'd seen before, pierced the morning sky. "They're getting desperate," she broadcast across the colony's now sophisticated defense network. "Everyone remember, desperate predators are predictable predators." The Titan-class war beasts emerged from their pods like nightmares given form. Each one was the size of a small building, their bodies a twisted fusion of multiple apex predator species and bleeding-edge Imperial technology. They moved on dozens of legs, bristled with weapons, and possessed enough raw power to level entire settlements. In her research facility, Priya Patel's instruments were going haywire. "These things are incredibly unstable," she reported to the colony's leadership. "The Empire sacrificed control for power. They're barely containing the energy output from these creatures." That observation proved crucial. The humans of New Haven had spent weeks perfecting their hunting techniques, and they recognized an opportunity when they saw one. They didn't try to match the Titans' raw power, they didn't have to. "Look at their movement patterns," Marcus Thorne noted from his observation post. "All that size and power, but they're still running on the same basic programming. Still thinking like predators, not conquerors." The colonists' response demonstrated everything they had learned. Teams of modified harvesters, now practically mobile fortresses, coordinated their movements with surgical precision. Drone swarms darkened the sky, their electronic warfare suites targeting the Titans' increasingly unstable control systems. Lisa Chen's Rangers had developed what they called pulse nets, overlapping fields of electromagnetic energy that could disrupt the neural interfaces between the Titans' biological and cybernetic components. "Big and powerful is great," she commented as she watched a Titan stumble into one of their traps, "until you can't control where all that power goes." The Empire had created their Titans to be unstoppable forces of nature. Instead, they had given the humans of New Haven bigger targets with bigger weaknesses to exploit. The colonists didn't just hunt the Titans, they turned them against each other, using their own power and instability as weapons. "They still don't understand," Raj Singh observed as he coordinated the northern sector's defense. Size and strength never made humans Earth's apex predators. It was our ability to observe, adapt, and cooperate. The turning point came when Priya made her final breakthrough. Their power systems are completely overloaded, she announced over the emergency channel. If we can trigger a cascading failure in one Titan, the energy release will create a feedback loop in any others nearby. The plan that followed demonstrated why humans had always been the most dangerous predators in any ecosystem. The colonists didn't just hunt the Titans, they orchestrated a symphony of destruction, using everything they had learned about Imperial technology and predator behavior. Hannah, commanding her sector's defense from her modified harvester, watched the plan unfold. Teams of hunters herded the Titans together, exploiting their territorial instincts and programmed hunting patterns. Drone swarms and pulse nets corralled them into killing zones while modified farming equipment bombarded them with electromagnetic pulses carefully tuned to their weakest frequencies. In orbit, Dr. Nix watched the tactical displays with a mixture of horror and admiration. "They're not just surviving anymore," she reported to a stunned Varric. "They're demonstrating mastery. Every challenge we presented, every weapon we deployed, just gave them more opportunities to prove why they dominated their homeworld." The final battle was both spectacular and inevitable. The Titans, their control systems compromised and their power cores destabilizing, turned their tremendous power against each other. The humans of New Haven had transformed from prey to puppet masters, orchestrating the destruction of the Empire's ultimate weapons. As the last Titan fell, Hannah broadcast across all frequencies, knowing the Imperial fleet would hear, "Let this be a lesson. You thought you could hunt us. You thought your technological monsters could overwhelm us. Instead, you gave us the chance to show the galaxy why humans were always the apex predators." Supreme Commander Varric, watching his ultimate weapons destroy each other, finally understood his fatal mistake. They hadn't just underestimated the humans' ability to fight back, they had failed to recognize what made humanity truly dangerous. It wasn't their technology or their tools. It was their ability to learn, to adapt, and to turn any challenge into an opportunity. Dr. Nix made her final log entry as the Imperial fleet prepared for retreat. The Empire tried to conquer what they saw as simple farmers. Instead, they awakened something far more dangerous, the primal hunting instincts that made humanity the dominant species of their world, combined with the intelligence and technology to apply those instincts on an interstellar scale. On the surface of New Haven, as the Imperial ships fled the system, Hannah stood in her command center, surveying the aftermath. Fields would need to be replanted, equipment repaired, and communities rebuilt. But they had gained something far more valuable, a reputation that would protect them and other human colonies for generations to come. "Send word to Earth," she instructed her communications team. "Tell them that the galaxy just learned why humans were always the most dangerous species in any ecosystem. We didn't just survive their war beasts, we reminded everyone that humans were the original apex predators."